And Bruce, staying with you for item 10, the financial performance report for the 9 months ended 31st March. Any commentary on this one?
Yes. In December, we reported to you a optimistic forecast position for operating result of 6.2 million. That has steadily improved over the last quarter, month on month. We're currently looking at a significant surplus of 19.1 million. In fact, I've just seen the April forecast is 22.1 million. So there's been we're looking potentially at a very good financial position this year in terms of OPEX. It's driven by a number of things. Some of it is COVID related. Some of it relates to us being slightly conservative in our budgeting because of COVID. That looks at things like facilities revenue, where we were slightly conservative, and the revenue has been better than we expected. Subvention credits, we didn't expect any this year or the next 2 years. We've re-looked at that, and we received a 2.2 million subvention credit last month, and we're expecting that in the future as well, so that's a positive. You know about the CCHL dividend. Parking revenue is probably the one detractor that is down slightly in a city parking. Outside of COVID, there's things like consenting volumes,
really high,
where we predicted a slowdown in consenting due to a supposed recession. In fact, our consenting revenues and associated expenses are significantly higher than we expected. There was the extension of the Burwood landfill, which has generated additional revenue, partly offset by some costs. At the same time, we've had quite a tight control on our costs. In fact, our costs are forecast to be slightly under budget this year. They've been well managed. There are some costs, as I mentioned, that are up around consenting and Burwood landfill. There were some savings in the recycling and organics area around the way, in terms of volumes being down and the way those were handled. As I say, very good forecast financial position, and that will have a positive impact potentially on next year's rates in terms of the LTP. In terms of CapEx, I won't go into that in any detail given the report you've had from Ruth. So I'm open to questions.
Excellent. I mean, I think the key message is that this is a good news story. That 22.1 million surplus, as noted in paragraph 4.3 of the report, will go to debt reduction, is greater than the residual COVID debt that was planned to be drawn down in the next financial year, which means that there won't be a need to draw down any further COVID debt. That obviously has a flow-on effect to the rates in year one of the LTP, which is very positive. So there's a lot of what you've just told us that, very positive information and does reflect good news, both in this report, but more particularly for year one of the LTP and the rates impact. So thank you for being the bearer of good tidings. Moving to questions. Are there questions on this report? Sam?
Just a quick one. Thanks, Bruce, and I agree, it's good news. The only thing was in 4.3, the interest expense overstatement in the draft LTP. So is that currently in the draft that's out for consultation? Or
that should actually read an interest overstatement in the annual plan.
Yeah,
in the current year's annual plan.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's not in. So we're not like we've already. What I was hoping was we'd get to the LTP and we've got more saving.
No, sorry, the figures in the LTP are correct. They will improve slightly with the reduction in COVID borrowing, of course.
Okay, cool. Damn, I thought we'd found another 3 million.
Thank you. Yanni?
While I appreciate this is good news in terms of the budget, I guess the two areas that I'm concerned about is the fact that we're underspent in water maintenance of $2 million. This is on 5.4, and 5.3 roading and footpaths timing of maintenance. So two of the kind of key things that we're really concerned about, and we're underspent. So given what we're discovering with some of the water issues that we've had, how can we be in a position not to have spent the water maintenance budgets?
I was hoping Helen was still here.
Okay.
It might be a question that if we haven't got somebody in the room who can answer it now, we need to take offline and provide information by email.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to get information. I just would have thought at a higher level, though, where we've got huge dissatisfaction with footpaths. We've just had the report that shows, a huge number of complaints around the condition. And Denton, which I haven't seen the sort of closeout report, what happened at Denton, but also we know what happened in Akaroa. We have seen that report around, things not being done because of budgets, and yet we're underspent. So I guess I was just really interested in that high level. How does something like that happen? And is the systems in place so that we do spend that budget to ensure that we can address those priorities?
And I think there are, things that we'd probably expected to be addressed within Yanni's question. Doesn't underspend necessarily mean that the work hasn't been done? Or does it mean the work has been done but it's cost less? But then if we've got a surplus, are there other projects that we could be bringing back to use that surplus if we're in a constrained environment where there's work that we naturally would be choosing to do if it was affordable? So if we can pick that type of thinking up in the written response back, that would be helpful. Because an underspend doesn't necessarily mean that the work hasn't been done. It may be that it has been done, but more cost effectively.
So I would add to that, Chair, is that actually in the finance report where we have those things that Councillor Johansson is right in terms of questioning, and he did this last time as well, is that there is a specific comment in the finance report over something that might be perceived as not a good thing. So what are the facts around it? Either that actually we've got better pricing or whatever it might be, or we don't have enough staff, or whatever the result is. Put it in the report so that he doesn't have to keep asking the question.
Yep. Great.
Just
Thank
the
you.
other thing, I mean, just in the revenue, really, really good to see the Hepuna Taimoana. And I think we've had, have we had some information back on how that's performing? I think we have, haven't we, around what we were expecting. But the Rec and Sport revenues, I didn't quite understand what it meant by due to the release of revenues from the balance sheet. What, is that just an accounting kind of?
Yeah, effectively it is. It's revenue that we've received in prior years that we haven't recognised.
Right.
So it's being released from the balance sheet. I'd have to look at the reason for that.
What page is that on, Yanni?
That's on page 91.
Thank you.
I can answer that. It's to do with consenting, and we hold the revenue. There's always a slight delay between when it's received and when it's released because of issues around consenting and whether refunds have to be paid. And there was just this year that prior year's revenue was released. That's what that relates to.
Oh, right, with COVID and memberships and things
Well,
like
not
that.
necessarily COVID, it's just a normal delay, but it's because if we release it all at once, there's chances are, if we have to issue credits, there's a small refund.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No more questions? James?
Kia ora, Bruce. Look, I'm not, just because it's been raised, I just want you to confirm regarding He Puna Taimoana, the hot pools. I understood, and as I say, I haven't had a look in here, I understood that they're in profit, they're forecasting a profit for the year, whereas they were budgeting for a loss of something like 700. Is that right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't catch the first part of the question.
Maybe if you could repeat the question, James.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just wanting to confirm, it was raised about He Puna Taimoana, the hot pools in New Brighton, and whether or not what was happening with it financially. I understand that it's in profit when it was budgeted to make a loss of something like $700,000.
Mary's coming
Is that
down.
right?
Yeah, I haven't got I can't answer that question in detail, sorry.
Again, that might be one that we'll answer offline by way of an email, but certainly in the report, paragraph 5.2, 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet point, is showing higher revenues of 0.6 million. So that's there in the report, but it will be good to see how that's tracking against forecast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if we can get that information, again, just emailed around, that would be perfect.
So it's absolutely outperforming its forecast, but whether it washes its face is a different issue.
Yeah. So outperforming forecast, is it enough to bring it into surplus, or does it still mean it's operating at a
Find out for you,
deficit?
James.
Yep, let's get that offline.
It was more of a statement than a question, actually.
Okay. Yeah, Aaron.
Yeah, the lower revenue from parking, what's that down to?
What's it, sorry?
Why is
it?
the revenue on parking down?
My understanding it's volume,
Yeah, it was-
simply volume related. On and off street parking revenue is lower than budgeted. I'd have to get the business to answer any more detail than that.
Right.
That's correct. We've had lower than expected revenue because fewer people have been parking.
So fewer parking, or we have fewer car parks?
Yes, we've had lower than expected occupancy of our car parks.
So it's occupancy, so this is driven by occupancy of the car parks that we've got, that were the basis of the forecast, not because there are less car parks available for use.
Yes. It's a combination of the car parks and on street, but overall it's below what we were forecasting.
Yep, that's clear.
Right. So would that be suggesting we're charging too much to park, and that's why people are not using them? Do we look into that at some point?
Okay, so
It'll change a lot when young people start driving.
So I don't know whether there would be any information available as to what's driving that particular outcome. It's something that might be relevant to considerations. I mean, car park charges form part of the LTP, so maybe it might be worth anticipating that this would come up as part of an LTP conversation.
Yeah, because, Mr Chair, something I've raised each time we've removed on-street car parking is that it doesn't trigger a financial implication, which is a little bit alarming, that you'd take away an asset that returns you several $1,000s a year, but that doesn't count as a financial implication, where I believe it should.
Okay, so
and that could be it, but it might not be. So it'll be good to know, because Mike might be right. Maybe the buses are full. And
we seem to have moved well beyond questions at this point, but I think the point's made. And yeah, it will be interesting to know what it is that's driving that. I mean, what you're talking about is how the forecasting might have changed as a result of the number of car parks available. What we're talking about here is the uptake and the revenue from those car parks which are available been lower than expected because of less use than expected. Two different matters, but both of which are capable of being picked up as part of the LTP. Okay. Any other questions? Jimmy.
Maybe this is a silly question, but I still would like to ask a start. If we review those the two pie chart, I'm just concerned. For instance, looks like if we contribute more capital expenditure, then we probably will be reduced big amount of the operation expenditure. For instance, like three waters, wastewater, water supply, stormwater. Capital one, we contribute 12%, 7%, 3%, then we spend a lot for operating cost. However, the roading and the footpaths, we contribute for 23%. Then those operation expenditure only spend for 16%. And also the transportation, capital expenditure 8%, then operation expenditure is 3%. So I just don't know what's the rationale, those one. These two pie charts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pie charts are just trying to give you an idea of where the spend is occurring for OPEX and CAPEX, and to some extent they don't change a lot. It takes a lot to change them in terms of, a lot of money needs to either be not spent or additional spend to actually change that pie chart much. And I think to some degree they just are what they are, and they reflect the budget decisions you've made and the spend decisions.
So, Jimmy, this is simply reporting back on the
I know,
situation.
because I'm concerned, for instance, routing and the footpath, actually, it's those percentage relative is low. Whether it's still can have a good quality of maintenance, those the routing.
So I think
and
what
the
you're talking
footpath
about is a discussion that's more relevant for the LTP than this report back that we've got today. The balance between capital expenditure and the need for maintenance and
Yes.
where we choose to spend our capital area by area, they would all be matters for the LTP rather than for this report today. This is simply reporting back on budgets that we've previously put in place.
Yes.
If we felt that those budgets should be put in place differently, then that would be a matter for the long-term plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Anything else? All right, now I'm happy to move receipt of this information. Do I have a seconder for that? James Goff. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So now moving on.